Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Looking Deeper. Welcome to a brand new day, evening, morning, wherever you happen to be around Grandmother Earth. We're really looking forward to tonight's conversation, and it's with me and my dear friend, the Reverend Sandra Herrick. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Dana, how you doing? And welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, we're back on. And happy summer, everybody. It's like, wee! This time next show, it'll be fall.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And Merry Christmas. Just heads up.
And yeah, in case we just forget at the last minute.
Gee, I mean, like in the 3 more shows, it's Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, baby. That's how it works.
Wow.
Oh, God.
That's wild when you put it that way.
Zip zap, 21 be done.
Oh my goodness. So Sandy, tonight we're going to be talking about, I think, an interesting subject, American mysticism.
Yes.
What it's like to be a mystic in America, or what is mysticism in America? I think it's a little bit different than it is in other parts of the world, and not many people talk about it. So I'm looking forward to that. And for those of you that are listening and would like to know if we have the chat room open, it is indeed open. Hey, Jessica, it's good to have you in the chat room.
Hey, Jessica.
Hello, Sierra, if you happen to be listening. So yes, the chat room is open. Come on in and join in the conversation that we're going to be having about American mysticism. Sandy, when I said to you, Sandy, let's talk about American mysticism, what came to mind?
The brilliance of knowing that there are many different facets to spirituality in the broadness of our globe. And that not all spirituality is mystical, not all psychics are mystics, not all mediums have a mystical quality to them. And so when you mentioned it, it was to bring the clarity of that it's another section of something that is mystifying in the realms of the mysterious, the quality of intuition, the collective connective, the I would say the word magic, but it's not magic in the magi, it's the mystical magician, the mystical, I think the best way I can say it is solving or being aware of the mysteries from ancient to beyond. And I say that because for me, mysticism is about past, present, and future. It's not just then, now, and later. It's enveloping all those realms. And it also brings up dealing with the earth in the mystifying way that we are mystified by the earth and what earth is beyond our understanding of it, the mysteries of the earth. So that's the short version. And you?
Well, I agree with that. And one thing that you said that I couldn't agree more is that not all psychics are mystics.
No.
Not all mediums are mystics.
No.
When you say that, Sandy, what do you mean by that?
Well, I got my first round of goosebumps, the shivers, and I'll probably belch. For anybody that knows that, my body is an instrument and it works this way. What it means is that there are certain, like notes on a piano, tunes in an instrument, songs that are sung. There are certain vibrations that open the realms that vibrate in a level. When a mystic speaks, when a mystic touches into that space of energy, it's a global phenomenon. It's a soul-wrenching type of touching. And to be a psychic or to be a medium may be in the more immediate space or in the one-on-oneness or and I want everybody that listens to me say this, that it's certainly not a judgment or a disqualifying. It's the evaluation of if you go to college and get your doctorate, or if you get your what's a master teacher, what's the elevation of the vibration that you are qualifying with within the universe, not within your mentalness. Saying that to you just gave me a vibration right down the left side of my brain. And that means a mystic really has to work with a certain volume, a certain IQ of the emotional intelligence that is beyond satisfying the ego in any dynamic. And I mean that, again, in the beauty of we as humans, this is not making the ego wrong, need to be satisfied when we do certain things or go to psychics or go to fortune tellers or to astrologers to satisfy our ego, to satisfy our need, our want, our desire. And when you go to a mystic, something else happens. You are involved on another ray of light, another spectrum of personal involvement that is more encompassing. And not everybody wants that. Not everybody needs that. So it's that place of allowing yourself to really be with where you choose to be, where you would like to be, and what you qualify yourself to be. In the vibration of, you can play a violin, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be playing on stage at Carnegie Hall. And the mystic is literally that ultimate note that something vibrates so that you are emotionally connected in a universal way. I think that's the best way I can say it, in regard to everybody can pick up an instrument, but then how does it get played and how do you resonate with it? How does it affect you?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, for me, when we talk about mysticism or delving into the mysteries, there's a depth there and a breadth there.
Yes.
That not everybody is interested in, not everybody
Exactly.
needs. It doesn't give a quick answer. It usually leads us further down the rabbit hole,
Right.
Into extemporaneous things.
Right.
So a psychic can have, I mean, you and I would both be deemed psychic mediums, right?
Absolutely.
But we're also mystics in
Exactly.
that we are intrigued by the mystery. We want to know more of the mystery, and we walk in the mystery.
And the mystery calls us.
Yes.
I mean, this is a life journey. It's not a desired occupation. It's a calling.
Yes.
That you are deemed to have, yelling and screaming and kicking and fighting. And it's not something you desire to be. It's something you are that you have to cultivate. You have to figure it out because it's not a pleasant journey. You and I have talked about that, where it brings you through the fire on many levels to quantify you and qualify you. It's scorching.
It is scorching. It is scorching. And if we believe the Hermetic teaching, as above, so below, and as within, so without, and all of that good sort of thing, then we also know that whatever we're discovering within the mysteries around us, we are then discovering within ourselves and being pulled further into our own rabbit hole. And not everybody who works as anything, whether it's a psychic or a medium or a seer or whatever it happens to be, not everybody is interested in solving or even looking at the mystery of who they are.
Right. Or the mystery of the dimension that they're working with.
Exactly. Oh, this is getting good already.
Yeah. And so that to me, what I know about us in the balance of the journey of even finding each other, working with each other, and the spectrum of expanding within this relationship is that there is the possibility and capability of going from one end of the spectrum to the other, from the light to the dark. There is, in mysticism, you have to be able to hold a certain spectrum of balance and light and dark. And so there are many mediums and psychics that are not interested in that, are chosen to do that, or brought to the fire of that. And God bless them, that's their quality is astute in some other space. And in the mysticism, you have to understand that dark is dark and light is light, but there's a balance in it. It's not good or evil. It's the spectrum of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And we are challenged by it and brought into it. And I can honestly say the education of being exposed to it is not something you read about. It's something you have to experience.
Yes, and there it is. It's something you have to experience. A lot of people equate mysticism with religion, and that all mystics were religious, ascetic people. And that is certainly true in many cases, but it's certainly not true in all cases. For you,
Right.
Is there a separation between religion and mysticism, Sandy, or is it all
Absolutely.
the same?
No, mysticism is ancient.
Yes.
Religion is only 2,000 years old-ish in the Christianity aspect of religion. There are other religions that are as old as time, but the Judaism has ancient mysticism in it, way before it was considered a religion. It was the mysticism of Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's intrigue. There's the mystery of knowing there's alchemy. There's a certain alchemy in mysticism that really allows the quality between spirit, spirituality, beings, vapor, entities, beings from beyond, a resource for communication to any and all of it at any particular time.
Yes. Well, you and I both grew up Catholic.
Yes.
And for me, I was always exposed to the mystical side of Catholicism. Many Catholics are not ever exposed to the mystical side of anything with regard to the religion of Catholicism. For me, the mysticism was already there. It came in the idea that we could talk to the saints, and the saints would communicate with us. And more than that, the saints would help us with favors, right? We could petition them. Yeah, we could petition.
They were magical.
Exactly. We could petition them to assist us in certain matters. And so that's very mystical. It's tremendously
I think you said
mystical.
It right the first time, in certain matter.
In certain matters, yes. And so that's very mystical. But even within the Catholic Church itself, there are branches of Catholicism that are more mystical than others. Are you a Dominican nun? Are you a Franciscan nun? Depending on who your patron saint happens to be.
Right.
So there are a lot of people who don't even understand that in mainstream religion, there is a mystical side of it. And some people don't want to be bothered with that. That's for the ages of old to deal with all of those things.
And you're so right, because even a nun, if she's going to go into the mysticism of, then she's going deeper into the archives of devotion.
Yes.
To, the true mystics are the priests that would do exorcisms. Not all priests would do that.
Right.
There's, and they need the support of the feminine through the nun to be able to balance that. So, I do know that as a Catholic, when I first went to church, and we've talked about this each time we talk about it, is that I didn't go to church for the religion. I went to church because I was charmed with the energy of exactly what you say, the saints, the angelicness, the entities that were presented to us as allies. And that alliance is something that I leaned into. And so it's interesting, and I say this in the mystery of the mysticism, that what is different from mysticism and I would say Christianity per se is that I believe that Jesus was a mystic.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that he went to India and was in the mystery of all the teachings that India had, that it wasn't that he was just the martyr for being the son of God, that he actually qualified as a mystic, and somehow they minimized it in telling his story.
Mm-hmm. It's a juicy conversation when we get into mysticism.
It really is. And, you know, I could be offending all sorts of people, but it's that place of he was doing healings. He is known for being magical. And that's why they persecuted. That's why they prosecuted. He could do outside of any anointed structure, and told people, you too can be affiliated with something beyond being obedient.
Yes.
You can share in the mysteries of what God gave us. It's inside us. It's not in someone to give you. It's inside us. And that to me is really the anointing of mysticism, to be able to go inside ourselves and be a part of something that is ours to be a part of.
When we talk about American mysticism, that obviously connotates that we're talking about what it is to be a mystic or to experience mysticism or mystical experiences here in America, and in particular the United States. We'll just break it down that far. And every country, every place around Grandmother Earth has mystics. Every tradition has mystics, the prophets, the seers, the knowers, the sages, the wise ones, the healers. And here in the United States, of course, beginning with our native relatives, the First Nations people of Turtle Island, there are many mystics and mystical traditions. And then there are those who arrived upon the shores. Some mystical, some not mystical, some just wanting to get away from mysticism, some wanting to escape for a variety of reasons to this land, to this new place. And mysticism for the immigrants, back when the first immigrants arrived, mysticism went through its own turns and trials, literally. When you think about the early mystics arriving here to the shores, and not those that were already here, our First Nations mystics, what do you think about them, Sandy? How do you think about them?
Oh, it's a juicy question. When you and I were speaking this morning, one of the things that we opened the Pandora box to was globally how energy is anointed around the world in all the different countries and all the different areas of vibration, because not every continent has the same vibration.
Yes.
And the people that are born to or vibrate with a certain continent have the context of the herbs, the plant, the vibration, the conduit to the galaxy, to that which is where they are either seeded or brought to grow, that each one has its uniform, has its plant, has its ritual, has its magi, has its shaman. And I think of Siberia right off the top of my head, which is ancient shamanic energy. And when I come to America, one of the sorrows of the Americanaism of mysticism is that it brings me to the movie Thunderheart, where the white man dominated the American mystics, the true American native mystics, and told them to stop praying, to stop dancing, to stop using their God-given, earth-given, universal-given potency to produce vibration and the honesty of the energy of truth for America. And so the influx of all these that have come to our shores and brought their medicine bags or their tools of mysticism or spirituality or witchcraft or medicine, blah, 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 eventually would have run out of the vibration of their continent with the herbs or the roots, because they would have become Americanized in our soil.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest things that I've had the honor of having in my life was to be the shepherd of a kiva. Truly. That I actually owned a piece of land in New Mexico that had a kiva that is now sacred ground, roped off, thousands of years old. The shards around it, I have some of those shards right here next to me that were shown to me, offered to me, so I could pick them up off the ground. To know that something, and I mean this in that quiet, Dana, of why would a white girl from downtown Norwalk, Connecticut be brought to downtown Milwaukee in the middle of the desert of New Mexico and be a shepherd of a kiva, to hold sacred ceremony with it, not something I did, something it did to me. And I think that the medicine of the kivas has been squelched, denied, torn apart, and that slowly but surely it's coming back. They're opening again. That the mysticism of America, even with Buffalo White Woman, it's that what is it that America had to be shut down by, that it is now in the need of its presence being brought back. The need of its presence. So that whatever the vibration is that has tried to pollute it or dominate it or disintegrate it or deny it is all kind of being pushed back. And I see it, and I even see it on your property, Dana, where, you and I talked last month about the vision that I had. Something of the earth is moving again and allowing some energy from the mysticism of Americana soil. Just I don't even know if we call it America, but this continent needs to speak for itself again, rather than be told what it is by all the people that came here because they couldn't live within their own continents. And so when I hear, I really have to say, I'm kind of channeling here. You put me into this space of like, I'm on a roll, and I really am in that place of, I am waiting for American mysticism to truly unfold again, open and breathe again in its normalcy and in its, and I think of the sisters here, Barb and Dell, in the need to have the voice be spoken again and the prayers be said again before it all disappears.
Yes.
So when you ask me that question, it's like I'm standing here claiming the right to have something not die or fade away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From the ancientness of our souls, not the current energy, from the ancientness of our souls, yes, that need to be brought to the current energy.
Yes. For those of you that are listening outside of the United States or this American continent, which is huge. I mean, this continent is gigantic. It's not just the United States. We're just a part of the Americas, but for the, conversation we're having, for those of you that are listening from wherever you happen to be outside of the United States, for many tribal people here on what is known as Turtle Island, this is the time of the return of the mystics. It's the time of the return of the ancient teachings. Right. Some call it the return of Tesawi. My relatives call it the return of Tesawi, the return of White Buffalo Calf Woman teachings. And others refer to it as the time of the return of the eighth fire, or the start of the eighth fire, which is the return of the ancient teachings. And those are resurfacing. They are coming back. They're looking different than they did, in the 1500s and the 1400s and before that, when Todd's relatives, the Vikings, came ashore to these lands. Things change, and spirituality is always changing. It's not a stagnant thing. It has a life of its own, a consciousness of its own, and it's always becoming.
It's always morphing.
It's always morphing. It's always becoming. And so there are very few, Native Americans or First Nations people here in the United States make up just over 1% of the population.
And that wasn't always the way.
Not even close. No, there were hundreds of millions in the beginning. And of that, just over 1% of the population, there are over 500 recognized tribes, and so many tribes that aren't federally recognized for whatever reason. And within those tribes and within those Teoshpayes, those families, there are mystics and there are non-mystics. And so it's morphing. It's becoming something different. There are celebrations of the return of the teachings being kept by the storytellers and the teachers and the medicine people, the Wichasha Wakan and the Wian Wakan that have kept those things alive. And for those of us that carry the Chanupa, we carry the pipe. Part of what we carry are the stories and the teachings that, my relatives, particularly my elder sisters now, my Chues, continue to teach me. To keep those stories alive and to keep those ways alive. But the interesting thing about being in America and being an American, I refer to myself these days as an American mystic, is that while in my bloodline, the bloodline is also Cherokee and Cree, because my people are from the deep south of the United States, the fact of the matter is that I'm also African, or I want to say specifically Congolese. And I am also what we would call a Celt, Scottish, British, Welsh, Irish. And I can't not be that. But I'm not in Wales, and I'm not in the Highlands of Scotland, and I'm not in Britain, and I'm not in Ireland. Although my soul longs to visit those places, my soul and my body are here, where my Cree and my Creek and my Cherokee relatives began here. And so there's a blending in America. There's a blending of the wisdoms. Because in our blood, in our bones, for most of us here in America, we are a blending. We are a nation. For, 98% of us, right? We are a blending of immigrants. And the mysticism of those immigrants we carry in our blood, in our bones. And some of us also carry the original.
But Dana, I really think that that's part of the magic and
Yes.
mysticism of what is now.
Yes.
Because all this blood needed to mix and crossbreed
Yes.
and intertwine and braid the magic so that the earth and the universe collaborate together, and not just this continent, that continent. There's a heightening of intelligence. There's a heightening of the collaboration.
Collaboration is the word.
And it is in our blood. You and I collaborate in our own blood with the world.
Yes, and with the mysticism of the collaboration of who it is that lives in our blood and our bones. There's a collaboration.
Exactly.
There's a coagulation.
Yes.
That happens.
Yes.
And for many people around the world, if you say American, if you use that word, there are all kinds of thoughts that crop up. And one of them that is not typically thought of is mystic. One of them that's, typically with a lot of people will say to me, are the cowboys and Indians really a thing? You travel extensively around the world. I travel extensively around the world. And one of the first visions that people have of those of us who live here are cowboys and Indians.
And they're real.
And yes, they are real. They are very real.
Between the two of us, that's a cowgirl, you the Indian.
Yeah. So that is real. Yeah, but that's usually one of the very first thoughts, or it's Hollywood, or, those kind of things. But very rarely are we ever thought of as mystics. Why do you think that is, Sand?
Well, like I said in the beginning of the answer to the last question, we have been denied or shut down the incredible dynamic of what was before the white man perpetrated, or the Spaniards. I mean, again, living in New Mexico, one of the great horrors of being there was to see that it was one of the most volatile places between the Spaniards, the Mexicans, and the Native Americans. It was a bloodbath of who was going to take over the land. Mm-hmm. And the history was not peaceful. And therefore, the magi, the magic, that was used in warfare. I mean, you think about when the prayers were said or the magic was activated, going to Egypt and hearing what the prayers were to protect the leaders and the priests. You see on the hieroglyphs, I had enough line, on the walls, that these were the prayers that it's supposed to protect you for 60,000 trillion years.
Yes.
And so these prayers were activated already, knowing that time was going to take time and spread. Mm-hmm. And there's this place of, when you say the blood, I am amazed how much blood is spilled to provide a certain continent with an emotion, with the needed blood in order to have the prayers be activated or needed, or the energy and the vibration be activated so that it goes out with the warriors or for peace. And when you say America and the Indians and the cowboys and all this, let me ask you this. Why do you think we had to be shut down in the karma of the American mystic?
Well, I think that it originates with some of the very first people who came here, which were the Puritans. And that gives me the shivers upon the shivers upon the shivers.
Yeah, buttoned up and tight.
Buttoned up, tight, because one of my very first relatives to arrive here from across the pond was hung by her neck until she was dead as a witch. And where did that happen? In your hometown.
know. Karma,
In the
karma.
place of your birth,
Yep. Norwalk, Connecticut.
my relative was hung for being a witch. And who did that? Well, it would be the Puritans, who were large and in charge in the 1600s, that perpetuated that crime out of fear of what they did not understand. So it was, I believe, the spirit of fear, the spirit of control, that permeated that time.
And savagery. There's this, when we say they were properly dressed and very tight, one of the gifts of living out in Montana and New Mexico, California, is to see the beauty of what artisticness Native Americans lived by. Their art, their beadwork, their sacred objects, their dress, their painting of themselves, the feathers. They are the architects of nature upon the human body.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear the stories of when people started going across the mountains and going to Yellowstone, and hearing the incredible stories of what's out there, again, living in Bozeman. I mean, I kind of acquired my education by being dragged around the world by spirit. So going to Bozeman and seeing what a normal, civilized, quote unquote, more or less, Native American looked like, their painted faces, their incredible adorned bodies with the furs and the leathers, they were still seen as animals rather than something from Europe in the 1600s that, or the 1500s, Louis V, Versailles, they dressed different.
Yes.
So they were seen as these creatures rather than a civilized, cultural human being.
Right. Well, and shortly after the arrival of the Puritans came, the Church of Rome, and that's a whole show in and of itself. And so for a lot of reasons, the bottom line is this: mysticism, the medicine, the holy medicine, the Pejutawakan is real. It has a force.
Yes.
It has a force that is wielded for, something. Call it good, call it bad, call it whatever it's being utilized for. But it's real, it's potent, it cannot always be seen. And those that do not understand the mysteries or mysticism are fearful of it. And if enough of those fearful people are the people in power, we know how that story goes. But throughout time, the mystics have been feared because they're a very intrepid group of souls. They will tread where angels fear to go.
They're bigger than the body, Dana.
Well, exactly right. And they understand that the magic, if you will, the medicine is real. It's still real. It's always been real. It's morphed, it's changed, it's expanded over time, but it's real.
Yes. So, God bless your anger, because I can hear it stirring inside you.
I think I'm channeling my relative who hung in your hometown, maybe, right?
Come on, baby.
Yeah.
And it is, because we do. And I really want to say, I think we both are channeling, or let's put this, we are channeling. It's not a thought. There are voices speaking with us and through us tonight. And so I want that noted and honored, and I am grateful and I appreciate that something in tonight's show is vibrationally setting a certain cadence and tone.
Right.
And therefore, it is even speaking about the vapor, the smoke, the vibration of an unfolding of something that has been dominated and suppressed, that within its own time and its own karma, its own process of its truth, has integrated the blood, the bones of all those ancestors from other cultures in its soil, because now America is laden with the blood and bones of those other cultures that have been buried here.
Yes.
And something else is birthed from it.
Yes. It has been awakened.
Exactly. And yet still is honored and dignified with, it is American mysticism.
Yes.
In the blend of, because it is on this continent, and it's not something that is, I don't want to say this, I want to say it respectfully. It is because of something that has brought the ancestors, the migration, the immigrants, the cultures, the different forms of religions, and certainly it did not homogenize it, but it has cultivated a certain intelligence.
Yes, it has calibrated itself.
Yes, and it's time.
It is time. You know, for many people in other parts of the world, aside from thinking about cowboys and Indians, they think of us Americans as all Hollywood and the Kardashians. And, you know, there is a general, you know, idea about that. But I will say to those that are listening, we are not all that. That is a slice of America. And so does spirituality exist, or is the American God football? Is the American God the media? Is the American God now glamour? Who is it that we worship at the altar of, generally speaking?
Wow.
Right? Who is our God?
You took a turn. You took a turn.
Right, but in...
You're talking to the globe right now, so I want to back you up with you're talking to the world right now about something that you want people to hear about what mysticism is, and not the mystery of America.
Right. And so in and amongst all of that, it has not eradicated the American mystic.
No.
We exist in and amongst all of that glamour and glitz and every other thing that happens here. We are still here. And our ancestors work through us. They speak through us. And right now, at this time that we're living in, more than any time, their wisdom teachings, their gifts, their talents are being born again, if you will, through us, made for this time that we're living in.
So let me do something to really give you the credit for being outraged. And that is that this phenomena of fame that the Americas are going through, of what the sensational Twitter is about, or these people that have the ability to have 47 million followers and become billionaires and all that other stuff. I mean, that is as viable and real as it can get. And it's not about they figured something out and have magic and power. They figured something out, and they have worked the phenomena of networking.
Yes. And
they are in the frequency of what it is current for this generation in social networking, and they're at the altar of fame. Mysticism is not about fame. Mysticism is about sacred. Mysticism, and I think that it's also important to be able to say that one doesn't have to be famous to be a mystic.
That's exactly where I was going. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
any mystic truly worth their salt is probably in a cave doing something very quietly, or in a kiva, or in a sweat lodge, or in the solitude of the quiet.
Or their kitchen.
Or in their kitchen. Or rocking their child with the breastfeeding. I mean, so it's about humility and dignity, and the consistency of, oh, this is a good one. So I'm going to ask Spirit to really say it. Humankind being attended to.
Yes.
The spirit of humankind being attended to.
Yes.
One of the things that I just saw, and this is one of those radical moments for me, is that the Afghani women have been told to stay home because the Taliban men have not been educated on how to respect them. I have a very dear friend who went to Kabul every few months and worked with the World Bank and educated in maybe 10, 12 years now ago. She was going all the time, and she was educating the Afghani women in how to produce self-awareness and how establish themselves as dignified and able to make a few pennies and establish safety as women. That was mystical work. That was mystical, spiritual, sacred work.
She's an astonishing woman.
Yes, you have sessions with her right here in this room. And to know that I qualify her as a mystic because of the energy that she would bring, that would bring resources to those that are in need of experiencing life.
Yes.
And so when you and I are talking about mysticism and Spirit is talking about mysticism, it literally is not about the fame. It is about reestablishing the resources of life on so many levels of dignity that we vibrate again with dignity rather than domination, power, and violation. Because that's how the American mystic lost, quote unquote, its potency.
Yes.
So something in the Aquarian age is bringing the opportunity for that feminine or that. Now this is interesting. I just had the vision of Dustin Hoffman in what was the movie he was in, where he was the adopted child of a Native American tribe. Oh God, I can see it. But it's Native Americans had visions. The shamans had visions. And these visions are so potent because they watched in the vision of their mystery that they were going to be annihilated and invaded. They saw it. How do you deal with your own domination coming as Spirit's kindness to pay attention? You're about to be annihilated.
Right. That's understanding the mystery.
Exactly.
Because we all go through, as mystics, you go through that same annihilation.
And that they would have been forewarned, cover the sacred objects, be quiet about certain things, protect the sacred.
Yes.
And this is part of the treasure that's being relieved to be of breath again. So I want to thank you, Dana, for the Enchanted Forest, for being a sanctuary of the circle
Mm-hmm.
and of a quiver that is vibrating from your soil, from your prayers
Mm-hmm.
and the ceremony and the NEP, and to really say that it is and again, I'm sitting kind of in the vision. I look forward to see what the mysticism of the mystery of the smoke that will manifest in the next few years from your NEPs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Sandy. Keeping the mysteries alive is part of what a mystic does. And for those of us that are American mystics, there are several versions of the mysteries that we collaborate with our ancestors. And we may feel a love for one more than another. And that's okay. When we take a look at our bloodlines, and oh, my drum just went ting.
I heard it.
Yeah. When we know that we're made up of a variety of ethnicities, even, or colors, one of those, or two of those, or three of those may be more appealing to us, or we may have a longing for that. And that's okay. Maybe not all of them call to us, but one or two of the forms of mysticism does. That's all right. Some people feel guilty that they don't feel a love or a fondness for maybe their Polish, the tribal ways of their Polish relatives or the ancestral ways of their Irish relatives. And that's okay. I think that we're drawn to what we're meant to be drawn to. And for me, being drawn to the spirituality of my Native American ancestors played out because I'm an adopted person in an unusual way, but it all came together beautifully, as I would learn when I met my biological family for the very first time. But spirit brings us to. I certainly didn't go looking for that Chanupa Wakan, that holy pipe, that sacred pipe. And yet here I am living on this land with my own hochoka, and I'm a sanctioned pipe carrier, and I'm sanctioned to pour the waters. And my teachers are my relatives. And I keep those ways alive by, having those ceremonies sung in the Lakota language and following those protocols that are very old in those ways. And I keep them alive. I feel as though I'm a keeper of those ways. And even as I'm saying them or singing them, it's also joyful for my Congolese relatives, my Nigerian relatives, my Scottish relatives, to be singing right along with, in joy of keeping the ancient teachings alive for this time that we're living in. How do you feel about that, Sandy?
I believe that what I'm hearing you say is the harmonizing of the many.
Yes.
And that in itself, because there is, again, the gathering, there is the conduit, there's the connection with how many different protocols do we all follow, and yet when we sit in circle with a certain aspect of a union, that circle unifies in a way that we feel eternity.
Yes.
When there is that, whether you're in an inipi or in a church or in a synagogue or a stupa or a kiva or, sitting on the mountain or wherever you are in that sacred dome of your holy, the holiest of holies, please pay attention to the moment where infinity exists. It's timeless. That to me is mysticism. And that is when the mystic of the moment that you're in is literally anointed with the energy, the beings, the collective mystic that allows you to sit in the mystery and be a part of it in the wonder of its eternity. For me to sit on the cornerstone of one of the great pyramids at 4 something in the morning on a full moon by myself, and every once in a while have an Egyptian man walk by with his machine gun and ask me if I'm a coke. Yeah, I'm okay. I think I'm just going to sit here because my friends are in the king's chambers, and I'm sitting there by myself. The eternity of time was experienced. And it allowed the voices of all the realms to be in harmony with, they all sing together in their own vocabulary, but they're singing for the same reason.
Yes.
And I think that's what's mystical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mysticism is not isolating. It doesn't singularly, it can't be owned by one sanction of identity.
Will you say that again, please, for those who didn't hear it in the back?
It cannot be owned point blank. It cannot be owned.
Thank you.
It is offered. You don't achieve mysticism. You receive mysticism. And see, I just got the download, the shivers, the emotion, the tear of, it's not something that is on the spectrum of I'm going to be. You are. All of us are mystical at birth. All of us. All of us are that mystical being in utero. All of us are given that touch that allows the unity of life to be experienced. And then the rest of our lives unfold. And we become who and what we are. And that in itself for me is, well, then who is your mother? Who's your father? Where do you end up? Who do you get born to? Who do you get delivered to? Who do you get shuffled around by? Do you have a split personality? If you have to split blood, I mean, the washing machine is very vigorous.
It is.
And we don't all come out clean.
No, we don't. Sometimes we, no amount of shout is going to remove some things.
No, I don't know if anybody knows that you really can't get blood out. It's still in there.
Exactly. So, Sandy, let's talk for a few minutes about the fact that here in the Americas, we do have some things that are original, mystically, spiritually, magically, other than, of course, our original First Nation medicine people and those wise teachings. But we do have some pathways that are original to the United States that a lot of people don't know about. And one of those is hoodoo. Sometimes it's equated with Southern conjure. We have something known as powwow, and that has nothing to do with Native American gatherings by that same name, but powwow, which is very Germanic in nature, that evolved here, and it still exists here, as does the hoodoo, which when we look at the antiquity of hoodoo, it came to us first by those of our African relatives who arrived here on slave ships, and it melded then again with Protestantism, Catholicism, and of course European practices. It's now known as hoodoo, Southern conjure, and one of your favorites, New Orleans voodoo.
Yeah, baby.
You want to talk about that for a sec? How did we get voodoo in New Orleans? And it's not the same as Haitian voodoo.
No. I in the Great Mother of Africa, from what I have been shown, that voodoo comes from the feminine, and that it was a dream before it was reality. And like white buffalo woman, interestingly enough, voodoo came from a black woman in white. Kind of like an angel, but very much the spirit of the feminine. And voodoo got a bad rap because, like Native Americans, whenever there is real power, whoever doesn't like it and can dominate it can make it look bad.
Yes.
So I think this is a given, and we have to honor that potency is what kind of rules the world. And so for me, in my blood, in my bones, there is definitely African blood. And you can see it even though I'm a white-skinned person, my family has African traits. There's so much stuff there that it's kind of like, if you weren't white, you'd be black. But voodoo for me, when I went down to Louisiana and I met Priestess Miriam, it was one of these things where the spirit divinely said, you're going south. You are going to meet someone. You need to get on a plane. You're going to go down there. This is one of those moments. And then I started dreaming. Voodoo is a dream that comes from the inside of dimensions of your soul. Please hear this, dimensions of your soul. And therefore, it is something that has been spoken about in many, many realms by many, many people. Unfortunately, it has gotten a bad rep and has been scary, but it also works with that place of, like other visceral crafts, snake, other animals, feathers, and what I think most importantly is herbs. It does conjure, and this is where it's very important. Conjuring really starts when the ego of someone comes to someone that has magic and says, do for me what I want because I'm angry and want revenge. It is then up to that which is the person that holds the magic to decide who they serve and what they serve. And so no matter what dimension we go into, for me, voodoo is sacred in the fact that I understand what it feels like to be brought across the ocean as a Black person with a faith and a belief, and to, within your deepest, richest, most profound devotion of that which is your ancestor, your memory, your dirt, that you would stay faithful to the way that you've been taught by your mentors, your blood, on no matter what land you land on. Ritual is not always pretty. And if anybody thinks it is, they're out of their goddamn minds. Ritual is fierce. It's primal. And so when I met Priestess Miriam, I came to her with a need. And I came to her with these dreams that had, dreaming in Louisiana is different than dreaming in New Hampshire, let me tell you.
You mean there in New England?
Yeah. that tidy whitey girl ain't down in Louisiana. There's some lush chocolate down there, let me tell you. So it's very different. and therefore the spirits are different. The soul is different. The singing is different. The crying is different. And the magic is ancient and necessary. And it looks for that space. Will you remember who I am, not what was done to me? That, for me, is the release of mysticism in the name of voodoo, and allow the priestess to be the priestess, to bring the beauty of the soul back to you, rather than be damned by something that says you can't exist. That's what it is for me.
It's amazing. What a great way to leave the conversation. We probably need to pick up on it when we speak again next month. Yeah. There's a richness here that's re-emerging, and I was reading recently that the popularity of forms of spirituality or pathways of spirituality that are indigenous to Americana, such as the Southern root work and Southern conjure, hoodoo, powwow, New Orleans voodoo, it's resurging, and so is its availability, and not necessarily to people who have been trained, right?
Right. So everybody pay attention to your ego and be aware of your soul.
Discernment, discernment, discernment.
Yes.
And I think that as we leave off tonight, we're sending a great big huge hug to our dear Lady Hawk, Catherine Harrison, whose father recently passed. So,
yes,
you know we love you, Lady Hawk. And a candle has been lit, as you know, for your daddy as he makes his journey back to his ancestors. And
he's flying with the hawks now.
Yes, he certainly is. And so we hold you in our hearts and in our love, and your daddy and the entirety of your family as he, is greeted by your ancestors, his beloveds as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining Sandy and I tonight. And
absolutely.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Thanks, Sandy.
Hey, anytime.
How about next month?
You got a date.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Blessings
Bye,
be.
everybody.